So the right approach to making sense of the world, especially making sense of suffering and cruelty, is that of humility, that we as humans cannot possibly understand fully.
Absolutely. In fact, in the Quran, it's very interesting. When God creates Adam, the angels say to God, are you going to create a race or a species that will spill blood and cause corruption? And God says to the angels in response to that question, I know that which you don't know. So even the angels have to humble themselves for a moment. The angels who adore God, who love God, who worship him, who obey him unconditionally, they are told by God, I know that which you don't know. And what we extract from that, what many of the early interpretations extract from that, is that God knows that there are human beings that will come out of this enterprise of humanity that make the entire existence of it worth it. And so just as, yes, there will be criminals and corrupt ones, there will be prophets and beautiful people that come out of this, and sages and saints that come out of this, that show that a human being who, unlike an angel who has no choice but to worship God, an angel has no sense of will, no sense of choice. An angel is created to worship and has no desires. A human being who has the choice of desire and worship, the choice of righteousness and wickedness, that there are human beings who will choose worship and righteousness, that will choose charity over cruelty, that will choose service and choose dedication and devotion over death and destruction. That there are human beings that will in fact ascend the angels in rank because they will live lives where they choose that capacity, that part of themselves, and they lean into that and worship God lovingly and obey him. You see, in some of the sages in Islam, scholars, they describe this as saying that the human being has the capacity to be anywhere from an animal to an angel, or even worse, to be a devil, to an angel. Not in the sense that we ever actually become angels or become animals, but that an animal, for the most part, seeks its desires over everything, doesn't really think about, many of the things that we are supposed to calculate as human beings, doesn't think about which territory it's infringing upon, or, how much of its appetite it should fulfill. It simply exists to fulfill its appetite, and that many human beings simply exist to fulfill their appetite, and they choose that over worship or reason or anything that is greater. Just they literally take their selves as gods in that sense, and their selves have no limitation on appetite, so they just keep filling that appetite and filling that appetite and filling that appetite. Whereas a human being can also go to the extent of choosing something greater and disciplining their desires, disciplining themselves because they're seeking a greater reward. We know many people that achieve great things in the worldly sense because they choose to study over sleep, for example. They choose to exert themselves towards their careers, towards their education, because they believe that ultimately the outcome of those pursuits are more rewarding than the immediate fulfillment of their desires. So as believers, we choose that love of God, and we choose that outcome that we seek, and we discipline ourselves to where we can even ascend past the angels in rank. Now, of course, I said we can go as low as an animal or even as low as a devil. And we have tyrants, past and present and future as well, that can become satanic in their nature because they allow their desires to take such control over them that they not only worship them, but that every other existing being around them simply becomes a piece of their own puzzle in pursuit of their own lordship and their own satisfaction. They will kill, they will discard. Not because, and I always say this, it's not that tyrants necessarily like killing people. It's that people's lives pose somewhat of an indifference to them. They're indifferent to people's existence. And so you become either an object for or against me. And so they're willing to discard children, discard people, discard the rights of others, because they ultimately have chosen that the greatest pursuit of themselves is the maximum position of power and a place to where they can fulfill what they want to of themselves without any limits and everyone else becomes either a threat or an opportunity in that regard.